Thank you, and welcome back to Harassment Awareness Training. We're in session 2 today of our Harassment Awareness Training. Today what we're going to learn about is cultivating respect, a culture of respect in the workplace. I don't know that you guys are going to learn a lot about that necessarily, but it has to do with the elements of harassment in the workplace. One of the things that I love about working with GLHN is because you already have such a great culture that exists today. There's nothing to change about that necessarily. What we're going to do today, though, in today's session is learn a little bit more about some of the unconscious things that we might be doing or that we're not aware of that will even help to further deepen and evolve the culture. Our focus today is to focus on respect in the workplace and how it ties to your organization's culture. And while behavior is really variations of gray, there will be a few exercises today where things don't fit quite in the box that I'm going to ask you to put them in, but I think you'll get a sense of why that happens. You're going to learn about the awareness of the layers of discrimination and harassment that exist and explore what is your own responsibility to ensuring that you're creating your company culture. As with last time, this is not just me talking at you. I love full participation. I always learn something new when other people participate, so I'll look forward to getting your input and your insights along the way. So when you think about the word respect, what does that mean to you? Respecting boundaries. What else?
Having a conversation without belittling someone.
Love that. I'm just going to put no belittling others, right? Oh, good Lord. What else?
Trust.
Trust. What do you mean? What do you mean by trust? When you think about respect, what do you mean by trust?
When you respect somebody, I think that kind of goes along the same lines as being able to trust them and understanding they listen to you and take into account everything about you as a colleague.
Okay.
And communicate with them. I think respect and trust kind of.
They kind of go hand in hand, don't they? Yeah, they do. Good. Thank you. Thanks for expanding on that. Okay. What else?
Understanding.
Understanding. What do you mean about that?
Understanding where someone is coming from, maybe their point of view.
You know what I love about that is understanding where somebody's coming from, stepping into their shoes for a minute, and getting a sense for their perspective, right? So great. Thank you. And then there was somebody else. I heard another word.
Repeat their question. Their response.
Okay. Thank you. Another word.
Caring about how you're making other people feel.
So caring about how you're making other people feel. So caring about others' feelings?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's important about caring about others' feelings?
Well, I don't think you can show respect to them unless you understand how they're responding to what you're doing or saying.
Yep, I love that. Culture, it's an important thing in companies, and let's talk about yours. Culture is one of those things that's invisible, sometimes hard to describe, but it shows up when people ask you, so what is it that you love about your job? When you think about going to work, what draws you there? So let's, creativity. Love that. What else?
The people we work with.
The people you work with. When you describe the people that you work with, how would you describe them?
I usually describe them as good people and creative and smart.
What else?
Collaboration.
So collaboration? Okay. So it's a collaborative culture. What else? People ask you, what is it that you love about your company? What's the culture like? What do you say?
Kindred. Family.
family. Love that. Family. Which speaks to a little bit of this up here, the people that we work with, right? But family, there's a different element. When somebody describes a culture that's it's family-like, what's different than the statement about culture? What creates that family sense?
Trust and respect.
Love it. I was looking for trust and respect. That's exactly what the element that falls in there. Is there anything else that you can think of about how you would describe your culture? The invisible aspects of what draws you here.
It's fun.
It's fun. All right. And when you think fun, can you think of some elements that make it fun?
Food.
Food. That came up in another session. The food was a big thing. Okay, good. Anything else that you can think of? All right.
I think we have fun joking around.
Joking around and things? Good. Humor. Okay, love that. Humor is a good thing to have. Right? Not taking everything so seriously. Right? So even walking into today and having things a little bit different, making some jokes about it, right? It's kind of fun. Well, good. So good list of kind of what makes up this culture. Again, it's the invisible elements that are sometimes hard to describe, and we don't often consciously think about them. And it all fits into how we want to cultivate this culture that we have. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, and I'm going to give you two different versions of it. Years ago, I was working in an organization, and in that organization, I loved the culture because we all supported one another, both with our professional endeavors and the things that we accomplished, as well as personal things that we accomplished. And at the time that I was working at this company, I was training for a triathlon. And so my eating habits and my workout habits and everything had to take kind of front and center in addition to my work, but it was different. Has anybody ever trained for a triathlon or a marathon or anything athletic like that? Okay, I wouldn't advise it. It's really hard work. But as I was getting ready for the competition and for the triathlon, one day I was walking down the hall, and one of my dear friends there, whose name is Earl, he was walking down the hall toward me, and he said, "Joni, wow, it looks like you've really toned up, and it looks like you're about ready for your race. How are you feeling?" And I said, "I'm feeling really great." And he said, "Well, I can tell." He said, "The elements of your entire body, it looks like you're fit and you're ready to go." And we high-fived each other. Yeah, kept walking down the hall. And that made me feel really great. It made me feel very supported and like it was like family, right? I could trust and respect Earl, and he was a great, great guy. Same hallway, different experience. I had a guy whose name is Bob walking toward me, and as he's walking toward me, he was kind of walking toward me and checking me out. "Hey, Hibden, you're looking fine." Right? And all of a sudden I'm like, oh God. And then hated the fact that somebody was noticing that I was getting in shape for my triathlon. Two very different experiences, right? Same hallway, two different guys. But you get the essence of that. The difference between you're looking like you're prepared and wow, you're looking fine. There's some nuances, and that's why there's always shades of gray. They both admired my physique, but for two very different reasons. I want to share another story with you, and it also has to do with culture, but the unconscious aspects that occur sometimes when we don't know how far we've gone. So there was a woman, Mary, that was working in an organization I had worked in, and she was a new executive vice president. She was based out of headquarters. She flew into town to come to our location and to visit, introduce herself, and to spend some time. And I was taking her around and introducing her to people as our new EVP. As I was doing that, we ran into one of our newest colleagues. His name was Jim. And Jim was walking down the hallway, and I introduced Mary and Jim to each other, and they shook hands. And she looked at him, and she said, "Oh my God, that is such a beautiful shirt. I love that shirt." And he said, "Thank you." And she said, "That blue on you, it's amazing. It matches your eyes." And he said, "Oh, thanks." And then she said, "And the way it stretches across your chest, it's obviously that you must do some bodybuilding." She said, "Would you mind if I touch your arm? You look like," right? And all of a sudden he just said, "You know what, I actually have a meeting, I've got to go." And she said, "Oh, all right, nice to meet you." And he heads off down the hall, and I'm standing there thinking, what just happened? She turned a perfectly great introduction, first impression, into something kind of weird and creepy. So I pulled her into my office and I said, hey, you have any sense of what just happened there? And she said, no, but man, he's got a great body and I love his shirt. And I said, time out. I said, understand that you noticed something, but at the end of the day, you went one step too far. And what was that step too far that she went?
Can I touch your bicep?
Can I touch your bicep? Yeah. But what else was weird about it? There was one statement made right before that one.
Knowing how it stretched across your
Stretched.
chest.
Yes. And it stretches across your chest and it looks like you must bodybuild. Now, different people might say, thank you, I appreciate you noticing that, I do. Right? So it's where is that step? And we never know where the step exactly is, right? Until it gets crossed. The context of sharing that with you is helping you then to understand what your line might be. And in front of you, there's some pieces of paper that have what's my line, and it looks like this. It's on in front of you. And the purpose of this exercise is to help you define where your line is. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading some statements. There's about 25 of them, so don't write big. And by the way, this is not going to be collected for any purposes. This is just for you. So on the left-hand side is the "it's okay with me" space. So as I read statements, write it over near the "it's okay with me." The middle is on the line, like your statement is kind of on the line for me. And on the right-hand side is "it's not okay." So we're just going to kind of experience and see what you experience for yourself, given the circumstances. All right? Everybody understand the instructions? Okay, terrific. All right, so the first statement is being teased by my boss. Being teased by my boss. The second one, being teased by my coworker. Being teased by my coworker. Next, receiving a compliment about how I work. Receiving a compliment about how I look at work. Receiving a compliment about how I look at work. Having somebody stand 1 foot in front of you and talk to you with a foot apart, a foot in between you. How about having somebody stand in front of you 6 inches and talking to you? Being asked out on a date by a coworker. Being asked out on a date by a coworker. Depending on your age, a coworker calls you youngster, girl, or son, or old man, old woman, or old timer. Depending on your age, calling you youngster, girl, or son, or old man, old woman, old timer. Having a customer or vendor compliment your smile. Having a customer or vendor compliment your smile. Having a customer or vendor ask you if you want a kiss, and then immediately hands you a Hershey's kiss. Having a customer or vendor ask if you want a kiss, and then immediately hands you a Hershey kiss. When you're told an off-color or inappropriate joke at work. Being told an off-color or inappropriate joke at work. When your boss calls you kiddo or kid. When your boss calls you kiddo or kid. Getting a shoulder massage at your desk by a coworker. Getting a shoulder massage at your desk by a coworker. When a coworker uses phrases like back in the day, back in the hood, in the ghetto. There are others that I could add, but when a coworker uses phrases like back in the day, back in the hood, or in the ghetto. You're not following it?
That's why, raise the correlation there.
Okay. So when somebody says something like back in the day, or back in the hood, we used to, or in the ghetto, we do, where on your line is that? Is it okay with you if you hear those phrases? Is it on your line? Is it not okay with you? When your boss tells you not to be so sensitive, don't be so sensitive. When your boss tells you not to be so sensitive, what about when a coworker says that? A coworker says, don't be so sensitive. Being told about your coworker's date. Being told about your coworker's date. Overhearing two coworkers talk gossip about another in an uncomplimentary way. Overhearing two coworkers talk gossip about another in an uncomplimentary way. Having someone say when they're really busy, I'm balls to the wall busy. Having someone say when they're busy, I'm balls to the wall busy. When your boss asks you to bend over for a better look. When your boss asks you to bend over for a better look. Having someone say, you're such a princess. Having someone say, you're such a princess. When a coworker calls you dear, sweetie, honey, or love. When a coworker calls you dear, sweetie, honey, or love. How about when your coworker hugs you? Coworker gives you a hug. How about when your boss hugs you? When your boss hugs you. When a coworker puts a hand on the middle of your back for a moment. When a coworker puts a hand on the middle of your back for a moment. How about when your boss touches your shoulder? When your boss touches your shoulder. Your coworker talks about their church faith or posts pictures of their higher being in their workspace. When a coworker talks about their church or faith or posts pictures in their workspace of their higher faith, higher power. Coworkers openly discussing the political landscape. Coworkers openly discussing the political landscape. When a coworker says, it was just a joke. When a coworker says, it was just a joke. That's all of the statements. So as you look at your list, what do you notice?
Poor penmanship.
Poor penmanship. I'm glad that you've noticed that. It's important. Somebody was going to say something. What do you notice about what you've done here?
I
Ron?
just noticed I had a lot on the line because in one context it might be fine and okay, but in another context it becomes not over the line, not okay. So there was a lot of those. It's kind of like talking to your accountant or to your attorney. The answer is always it depends.
Okay. So you're noticing you're a lot on the middle of the line because it depends. And what does it depend on?
It depends on how the comment is made and in what context.
Okay.
And how it's delivered. Like so, talking about a worker's day. Oh, we went out to a really nice restaurant and had a lovely time. Or, yeah, I was really hoping to go to third base. Then I don't want to hear about it.
So the context about a coworker's date, like we went to dinner and we had a really nice time versus, oh, we made it all the way to third base. It then makes a little, okay, the nuance of it. Okay, good. Great example. What else? What else did you notice?
I think a lot of the on the lines kind of depend on their reaction to my actions, like with being asked on a date. If I told them, like, that wouldn't bother me. If I told them I had a boyfriend and they kept on, then it would bother me, then I'd cross that line.
Got it. Okay, so again, the context and the nuance around it. So if you told a coworker about the date and they were like, oh, that's nice, but then if they went on and kept asking you about it repeatedly, then that would be across the line. Okay, good. Good example. What else?
Political landscape depends.
Political landscape
Trying to
depends.
find commonalities,
Mm-hmm.
that can be a nice talk, but if you're getting polarized, it's terrible.
Yep, so political landscape, it's kind of depends, because if you're talking about it and you're looking for other perspectives, which we talked about related to respect, right, or getting some understanding, it can be an okay thing. But if you're polarized and opposite and there isn't any listening by either party, then it can be tricky and uncomfortable, I'm guessing. Okay, good. What else?
The 6-inch difference between 1 foot separation and 6 inches of separation.
Yep.
On either side of the line.
So the difference between 1 foot, 1 foot's probably okay. 6 inches is what? It's no good. It's uncomfortable, right? And everybody's different with that. Did anybody have did anybody have most of their items on the left-hand side? It's okay with me. Like the majority of your items. Okay, good. Thanks for noticing. I appreciate that. When you notice that things are mostly okay with you, is there anything else to notice about that? Rob?
It might be on not okay for someone else.
Yep. I think that awareness that for some of us where everything is okay, nothing bothers us or offends us, what we seem to forget about is that for others, it may not be okay. And we forget to self-manage because we're so unconscious about, it's all okay with me, why would it bother you? Right? Okay, good. Anybody see that they had everything all the way over across the line, like all the way to the right-hand side? Anybody have any distinctions between touching? Like touching is just not okay with you. Okay, and I'm betting that might fall into the depend category. The reason I asked that question is I had one of the clients I was working with one time, one of the co-founders said, I just realized I do not like people touching me at all. She said, I've always known it, but I've never really looked at it. And she said, I always knew that like when the sales guys would come like throw their arm around me and I'd always flinch and ugh. But she said, in having you read all those statements, I don't want anybody touching me. And she said, and I didn't realize it was as strong as it was until now. So the purpose of this is just understanding that there's a line for everybody and understanding where your line is before it gets crossed if you can. And when it does get crossed, then what do you do about it? Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to do actually a group exercise. And I do want to have the handouts. So we're going to, I think we have enough to group into 3 groups of 3, or in this case 4 here. If we can do 3, if we can just pair up and share. What we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise where I'm going to have you share and work in groups for 10 minutes on what are the spectrums of harassment. So in your groups, Kat is handing out some paper that has more statements. And what I'd like to have you do is, based on those statements, put those statements in the appropriate box of inappropriate behavior, hostile environment, discrimination, and sexual harassment. Shades, I mean, literally, there are spectrums of gray that show up in terms of how harassment can occur. Some people, they have a blind spot to it. Other people are overly sensitive, and there's everything in between. So the word that I use with people is do it your best to self-manage. If you notice that somebody is uncomfortable with something you say, clean it up. And more importantly, if somebody says something to you that offends you or isn't okay with you, I would encourage you to behave like a 5-year-old. Why would I say that? I see some looks like, why would you say that? Why would I say behave like a 5-year-old if somebody tells you something?
Pretty vocal about it.
Pretty vocal about it. What do they say? What do 5-year-olds say when they notice things?
Whatever's on their mind.
Whatever is on their mind. You smell. Don't touch me. I don't like it when you look at me like that. 5-year-olds are so unfiltered at that point until they understand that it's not appropriate. And then at some point, we all clam up and we stop saying things to one another to say, you know what? You did that yesterday and it's actually not okay with me. Or I noticed that you keep putting your arm around my shoulder. And while we've been doing that for a while, what I know about myself now is I don't really like it. Can you stop? There are easy ways to say it to somebody that you really care about and that is part of your family. When we talk about culture and we talk about respect, respecting boundaries means accepting when somebody says you've crossed my boundary. Or as a family member to say, I don't really like when you do that. For some reason, we forgot how to do that very well with one another. And so oftentimes what happens is somebody that is in Kat's position might end up with a lot of people walking into her office saying, I don't like it when they do that. And rather than telling the person that can actually do something about it, we tell HR or we tell 4 of our best friends at work and all of our family members about something that somebody did that they didn't even know that they did it to offend you. It's not right. I really think we have an opportunity to share with each other. I was reading a book last week, and there was a statement in here that I really love that I wanted to pull out related to the 5-year-old. It says, the heart of a child is wide open. Children will tell you what scares them, what makes them happy, what they like about you, and what they don't. There is no hidden agenda. None. And for some reason, as we grow up, we always think there's another hidden agenda or another story. You never have to guess how a 5-year-old feels. So if somebody does something that isn't okay with you, it's okay to behave like a 5-year-old. Say what's on your mind and let them clean it up or say what they're going to say. Okay? The other thing, too, oftentimes when I work with people, and I work with people in a lot of capacities, is they don't even know how to find their own voice to say what needs to be said. They don't have the words. We make up stories. I could never tell him that. He wouldn't understand. If I say that, he's going to make my job really uncomfortable. Those are stories that we make up here. May not be the truth of it. So I encourage you to find your own voice how you find it. Do you guys know how to find your voice when you're afraid of using it? Anybody have any things that you do to find your voice?
I usually look for a mentor, like somebody I can run behind it, if I just get outside opinion to see if I'm in the right, or if I can approach it a different way, or.
I love that. Yeah, find a mentor, find a buddy, somebody that you can run something by and to see them, looking at this from the right perspective, to see if they have words that they can share with you so that you can say what needs to be said. Those are great ways to do it. You don't always have to figure it out by yourself. What I would encourage you to do is to a mentor, a person, a trusted person, not your 4 best friends at work. Because if you tell your 4 best friends at work, what happens? Well, they egg you on, and what else happens? There's a lot of gossip. And that just diminishes the workplace. That's not the culture that we want to work in. That's not this culture, right? So that's one way. Other ways to do it. Some people listen to songs, right? I think John Mayer has a song that's Say What You Want to Say. I think Sarah Bareilles has a song called Brave. There's a whole lot of different songs. There's poems, there's quotes. Find your voice to say what needs to be said. Because to ensure that you have the culture that you want, that line up with the values that make you uniquely you, if you're not sharing with each other the important things, then all of this gets diminished. And I know that's not what all of you want here. You guys love this place. This is family. It's a place where you can be creative and collaborative, and all of that only works if you share with each other when a line's been crossed. So the whole purpose in this session is really cultivating respect by understanding what's going on for you, and then being able to share it with others so that they're not offending you if they are. Does that make sense? Any thoughts or questions about that? Here's the thing, the bottom line is that we all look through our own eyes and through our own lens in a very different way. There's no way that any of us look through the same thing at the same time and get the same outcome and the same perspective. So when you're working with people and you've got something going on, or you say something and you notice that that person's uncomfortable, clean it up. Or if you know that everything's okay with you and nothing bothers you, consider the possibility that it might bother somebody else. It's just raising your level of consciousness around what it is that you want here. It's a great example of when you are paying attention to somebody else's lines, potentially, verbal and nonverbal, right? And having the ability to say to a friend that you've hugged for a long time because you are a hugger, to actually say, is it okay if I give you a hug? And then to clear it up, right? So then you know right from the start. It's such a great example. I'll share another one that's similar to that. I was working with a client and didn't know them very well. And I did something for this client, and he said, if I didn't know you better, he said, if I knew you better, I'd give you a hug. And it was so perfect. Like I felt it without the physicality of it. If I knew you better, I'd give you a hug. All right, with that, I think this concludes the program. Thank you so much. Have a great day.